Hi everybody, welcome back to Small Groups. We begin a new series tonight and we're going to call it The Real Deal. It's all about authentic Christianity. And what we want to try and understand is what's authentic and what's just, well, downright religious. In Luke chapter 16, Jesus tells a story of two characters, a rich man and Lazarus, a man called Lazarus. And the story goes like this. There was a rich man who had everything, an easy life, he did very well. There was a beggar man called Lazarus who had terrible sores and a horrific life of struggle. And Lazarus used to beg at the rich man's door, and the rich man would give him his leftovers, his scraps. Well, the time came for them both to die, and it says the rich man looked up from being in torment. Have you got that? And he saw Lazarus with Abraham. Now, in Jewish thought, that means heaven, paradise. And so, it's the poor man who ends up in paradise and the rich man who ends up in torment. Quite remarkable. The Bible goes on to tell us that the rich man asked Abraham to send Lazarus to warn his brothers so that they might not fall into the same mistake. But Abraham said to him, there's a chasm set between us, and neither can pass even if we wanted to. And the rich man then said, send Lazarus to them. And let me read to you what Abraham replies. Jesus said, he said to him, if they don't listen to Moses and the prophets, that's another word, or another way of saying the Bible, if they don't listen to the Bible, they'll not be convinced even if someone rises from the dead. Wow! People play the comparison game all the time today. We compare money, we compare morals, we compare houses, we compare cars, we compare families. What's my family like compared to yours? What are my children like compared to yours? And we even play the comparison game religiously. How righteous am I because of the things I do compared to you? But the problem is, who are we comparing ourselves against? And what are we comparing ourselves against? The Bible tells us clearly that the only measure that we'll be measured against is the righteousness and the holiness of God. When I was a boy, there was a brand new housing estate built, and we called it Spam Valley. It's famous. And the old adage was that people there, they have fur coats and nothing in the cupboard. And the idea was that people were just living beyond themselves and missing out on the basics of life, just to keep up with the Joneses, as it were. Well, once there was an elder and a bishop, and they kind of knew each other because they met in meetings, but they didn't really have much of a relationship. And one day, as the bishop was filling up his wonderful Jaguar at the petrol station, in pulls the elder in his Volkswagen camper van. He begins to fill up. And the bishop says to the elder, he says, do you have quadraphonic sound in there? Do you have a stereo radio in there? And the elder says, I have the latest thing. I've got more than quadraphonic, I've got twice quadraphonic. And the bishop's a little perturbed by this. And he says, okay, so have I. And the elder says, do you have a double bed in there? And the bishop looks at him. He thinks, no. And the elder says, well, I have a double bed in my van. Now the bishop was quite put out by this. Well, a week later, the bishop's driving along. And he sees the elder's camper van parked at the side of the road. And the windows are all steamed up. And he stops and he goes over and he knocks on the windows. And the elder opens the door and he's wearing a bath hat on his head. And the bishop says, so you've got a double bed in there? I've got a king-size bed in here. And he'd had it installed at great cost to the church. A king-size bed. And the elder says, you got me out the bath to tell me that? Well, that's a silly story, isn't it? But it's a story of competition and the way we compare ourselves to one another. It's ridiculous. Let's not play morality by comparison. And let's not play religious competition. You know, religion really can be defined as the word do. It's all about doing. But relationship with Jesus, we can define by the word done. It is all about what he has done. Jesus said, "It is finished." Woo! And he meant that. It is finished. And religious assurance tells us, yeah, we believe that Jesus lived and died. But you know, James 2 verse 9 says, even the demons believe that, and they shudder. Some people with religious assurance might say, well, I attend church faithfully. Well, if you go to a sports game, it doesn't make you an athlete. Think about that for a moment. Or they may say, well, I give money to the church, or I was baptized as a baby, or I do this, or I do that. That's not what it's all about. But relational assurance, it tells us, it shows us, it helps us to understand what sin's all about and just how wonderfully forgiven we are. It tells us about the work of the Holy Spirit within, purifying, sanctifying, and doing an incredible transformation in our lives. It tells us all about the purposes of God for our life. We have a destiny. It's not about what we do, it's about what Jesus has done and how we respond to that. So, you're going to have a wonderful discussion tonight. Don't play the comparison game. Don't play religious competition. Let me leave you with one thought. There's a parable that Jesus told. And the parable is the parable of the sower. The Bible tells us that a sower went to sow his seed. And there were 4 types of ground condition. Do you remember? There was shallow ground, there was hard ground, rocky ground, and then there was good soil. Have a look at that parable. Have a discussion about it. Have a look at the rich man and Lazarus story. Talk about that and see where we play this comparison game. But what about you? Are you enjoying a relationship with Jesus? Or are you stuck in some religious system that just keeps you spinning on the hamster wheel? Have a wonderful session, and I'll see you next time. God bless you all. Bye.